So hi, I'm Cade Shaler from the Nocturnal.
What's up? I am B. Earl, also known as Benny. I am part of the dynamic duo of me and Taboo, the writing team for Kushala and Werewolf by Night, which we started with, and that's my role.
What's up, everybody? This is Taboo Nawasha. I am proud to be one half of Skyview Way Studios, along with my co-writer and co-creator and co-partner in everything we do, Benny, aka B. Earl, and we co-wrote Kushala and Werewolf by Night.
So tell me what it is about, Ghostwriter.
Well, this series is about a Kushala, who is a Sorcerer Supreme as well as a Ghost Rider. And it really, at the grand scheme of it, it's about family and legacy and multi generations. We get to know Kushala in the one shot, and we meet her in the present day, and then we take her back in time. And then this story itself is really a time travel story as we get to meet her and her descendants and relatives throughout all these different periods of time.
Yeah, one of the most important things, Cage, is Native American representation. For me, as a First Nations, representative, being of Native and Mexican descent, it's important for us to have stories that resonate not only with Native American communities, but also is inclusive for everyone to be inspired by. And fortunately, we got to have Kushala be the matriarch of our story, but also one of the matriarchs of the Marvel Universe. We are proud to be able to just be conduits and the bridge between pop culture and Indigenous communities. We don't speak for all of them. We just speak as one of them. You know, I feel like our contribution to Marvel has been to bring in relatives and allies and folks that can actually give genuine, authentic representation, along with what we do with our storytelling to really elevate our game as storytellers.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what is it like, being able to bring that into Marvel, being able to, like I said, represent that one group, but also speak to so many others and bringing that authentic representation into Marvel?
Well, there's been a lot of relatives that have been part of the Marvel world, like Jeffrey Varegi, who we worked with on several books. You know, three books already that we've worked on. He's been with Marvel for 5 years. He's an amazing native, creative illustrator, animator. I mean, he just does everything, and I always want to give him his proper flowers because he's been at Marvel before we even got there. And he's just under the radar, but he's an amazing relative that has been championing Indigenous representation at Marvel. He actually was spearheading a project called Indigenous Voices that we also contributed to with all these amazing Native writers and Native illustrators. So just to be able to contribute and to lend our voice and bring in, other creatives and heroes in the community to highlight them as well, whether it's Tony Duncan from the Apache San Marcos clan, or we bring in Kenneth Shirley, who's Indigenous Enterprise, or on our first book, where we'll find out, we also brought in J.C. Shelton, who was a Hopi relative, and Vince and Dolores Schilling, just to give us the blessings, because we always want to do it right. We always want to have authentic, genuine representation. And like I said, we can't speak for every tribe or every nation or every Indigenous person, but what we can do is just be a bridge and highlight those heroes.
Mhm. So how long has this 8-part installment been in the works?
It's been a minute. It happened pretty much after Werewolf by Night came out, and then we got hit up by CB, and CB said, "Hey guys, I would love to keep working with you. We got another character, Kushala, and have you ever heard of her?" And to be honest, I mean, I love Marvel, grew up reading it. Kushala, obviously a newer character. I had not read the series that she, premiered in. When we both read that and dove into it and started talking about it, we're like, yes, we want to explore her. We want to build with her. And she's such an amazing character. And, in a weird way, like she has so much power, right? She's a sorcerer supreme and she's a ghost rider. She has a vengeance inside of her. And it's one of those questions of like, how do you make someone who's so powerful have a weakness? right? Like, what is their weakness? And in tackling her, and what was so interesting about her was that her power is her weakness. Like, that she has so much power that it ultimately, and in the very opening of the first chapter, when you read it, she's literally destroying Earth because she has so much power and is not able to control it, and it's this like chaos energy that has unleashed. And in our storytelling, we have Dr. Doom, who's looking to bring order to that chaos, right? So Dr. Doom is this like supervillain, but in his own way, what he thinks he's doing is actually trying to save humanity from itself. And Kushala is all of this power and raw energy. And ultimately, her journey is she needs to go back through all of these times with Olivia Ptera, her descendant from our time period, and ultimately kind of have this growth and almost learn how to, you know, control her power and utilize it and connect it through all of these generations.
I would also add to this, the fact that we get to have an amazing matriarch female lead. Like, yo, I'm a girl dad. I'm so proud of having a daughter. My one daughter, I have 3 boys and 1 girl. I was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother was the matriarch of my tribe. You know, my wife is an amazing inspiration and motivation to our family. So there's always a matriarch system that I was brought up on. And I also want to highlight that and celebrate the woman heroes. We had a matriarch in our first book called Werewolf by Night. We had Granny Rora, and we also had Molly, and we had JJ, who was part of the duo of Red Wolf and JJ. So my point is to be able to give a voice and create a story around this amazing matriarch has been a blessing.
And then, so going off a little bit of that, is there a greater, message? I know you mentioned, power is her weakness, or save humanity from herself. Is there like a greater message, that applies to the real world, with these characters?
Yeah, I mean, just not getting off on too many tangents, but I went deep diving I was really into philosophy and reading and, during the pandemic, and just kind of a lot of questioning about, our purpose and what it means to be human and what it means to be connected to Earth and ultimately to the universe. And I think in a lot of ways, Kushala is a story about, our own desire to identify and who are we, and it's about identity, and then the question of being and becoming. I was really influenced by Deleuze and this idea of the rhizome and oneness and fate. Are we all fated to some sort of destiny, or do we have free will? Do we have the opportunity to make choices? And ultimately what Dr. Doom wants to do is take away that opportunity for choice. And that's something we'll see as the story progresses, is that what happens if someone believes that they know what's best. And we have been coming through a lot of authoritarianisms and nationalisms and ideas about, how you need to live your life, or what, or freedom. Freedom is such a big question. And I think that's what this is about the idea of making choices and identity, and how our identity is something that has so much meaning to us. And Tab obviously can speak very much to this, and this is something we always talk about in our projects. And the idea of identity is something that is, becoming. It's a becoming instead of just being, or being told, or being put into a box. And I think a part of that is this mosaic, as we always talk about, of culture, and it's about the messiness. And I think that's a big part of what this story is about everything isn't black and white.
You know what's dope is the inspiration that I got. And I know Benny can speak to this too. When we watched Black Panther and we saw a hero without a cape that, was non-traditional to what we were used to in the past, like, it spoke to me on so many levels, where like, hey, maybe we can have indigenous heroes on the big screen one day, or we could have a Latino hero on the big screen. And then you have Miles Morales from that Spider-Man, Puerto Rican kid. So it's just like empowering different conversations of different walks of life, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, to be able to celebrate and highlight those heroes from the Marvel universe, let alone a woman like Kushala, who is ultimately so powerful that sometimes she gets in the way of herself, like what Benny said. And it kind of reminds me of my grandmother. My grandmother gave so much of herself to everyone else, which in turn caused her to not take care of herself. And so that metaphor of like always giving and wanting to put others before yourself is something that I've dealt with personally on my even though my grandmother was such a powerful woman in my eyes and my superhero, her kryptonite, or her downfall was always putting everyone before herself. And in turn, that was her demise. Unfortunately, she didn't take care of herself like that. So my point is that when you're able to pull from personal experiences or things that you may not be thinking about, but they actually speak to your real life, like that's the beauty of us as writers, is we do pull from personal experience and we implement that. And that's why it's important for identity to be part of that conversation, because Benny and I are always talking about identity.
And so speaking of that, you two working together, what is that like? What is it like, bringing in both your experiences and your identities and finding, a combination of the two to create a comic like this?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up. So Tab and I, our backgrounds, in this space is like I grew up in comics. Tab grew up with toys, and we always use that as kind of our common ground. It's like in a lot of ways we're playing with characters, like you're playing with toys. And you look at this idea. We're both big kids, like we'll never grow up. And I think you have to be in telling these sorts of stories. And we, obviously I am not a musician, but I play music. Tab is a professional musician, but that is also a crossroads and intersection we come to in our creativity. We look at our creative process as a jam. And in a jam, there are no bad ideas. There are no wrong notes. It's like jazz. If you play it twice, it's okay. It's jazz, right? and that's kind of how we operate. And we ping pong back and forth. And then, where my background is, I've been writing for a very long time. I come from film, so I then take all these ideas and all the stuff that we've been swimming in this jam session. And then it's that crystallization. It's that, ideation. It's that world building. It's taking it all and taking the ingredients and really bringing it into the lab and creating something that, you get to read. So that's our creative process. And, it's a blast,
And first and foremost, the thing that brought us together is that we're both fathers. So we have kids. And the fact that we're able to be inspired by our kids and see what makes them tick and what they're into, because that's what we do. We make content for our kids to be inspired by. And then next thing you know, millions of kids and families will be inspired by that. And that's something that's very important to us as fathers, as representatives of our families, as role models to our kids. We want to be able to make content that will inspire them, but also teach them to hold on to their childhood and their imagination. Because a lot of times we have to balance the technology and holding on to your imagination. Because we grew up, playing outside, riding our bikes and all that stuff. So we want to continue that legacy and just being mindful about the balance of technology and also your imagination. That's something that I would say we learned from being around Stan Lee. Doing panels with Stan Lee when we were doing Master of the Sun, just watching him and how he spoke about his inspiration and holding on to his dreams and aspirations, even at the age that he was at, he still had that childlike quality and that imagination to hold on to.
Yeah, I mean, I think just real quick on that, so much of it, like Tab said, is about our kids. And, my son actually in this comic, I was asking him, I was ping ponging ideas off of him, and he actually had a really great idea that will later, I don't want to reveal it right now, but he said, you should use this character. And it became a boatman in some way. And you'll read it later, I won't give it away. But when he said that, I was like, okay, cool. And went and read up on that character that I hadn't read in a long time. And I was like, wow, spot on. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's like we always look at our kids as not just like, as just children that should be quiet, stay in a, it's like, no, these are beautiful souls and spirits that have so much to offer and to give. And, and that's a big part of it. It's really empowering the children to be able to have a voice and feel heard.
Great. I think that's all the time I have with you guys. And it was great talking to you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Cage.
Thank you, Cage.